All right, Pam Bondi is President-elect Donald Trump's new pick for Attorney General, and the left, they are melting down. Big shocker. Take a look.
Pam Bondi is exactly what I was saying in the last segment that we should all fear, because she's competent. We may not agree with her ideologically, but she actually knows how to do this job. So if anyone on the Democratic side or anyone who cared about liberty or justice was thinking, well, maybe Matt Gaetz will screw this up and that'll give us some time. No, Pam Bondi knows what she's doing. She is a dangerous and effective pick, and that's frankly worse than what we would have got with Matt Gaetz.
Now, the left, they do have a right to be afraid because Pam Bondi is an extremely qualified nominee. She's going to be confirmed. As South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said, she is a grand slam, touchdown, hole-in-one, ace, hat trick, slam dunk, Olympic gold medal pick. Anyway, by the way, Senator Graham also had very strong words for the International Criminal Court after it issued an arrest warrant for the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. He calls the ICC a, quote, rogue, politically motivated organization that is trampling on the very concept of the rule of law. Senator Graham joins us now. Senator, great to have you. I'm really angry. First of all, I don't like any of these. I know you played a golf tournament earlier today. You look great, by the way, with the hat. Nice hat.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I hope you played better than the way Trump says you play. Trump told me, yeah, you need to work on your game a little. So I hope you had a better day
He's
today.
right about a lot of things, including that. Yeah. But I do have a Trump hat. No, thanks for having me. A little bit about... Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go.
A little bit about Pam. Home run pick. I've known Pam for years. She's competent, capable, ethical, former Attorney General of the state of Florida. President Trump could not have chosen better. And the only people that need to worry about Pam Bondi are the ones who want to use the law for the political purpose, those in the Department of Justice who really want to make the Department of Justice an extension of politics. Those are the people that need to worry. She's going to clean house. She's not going to engage in lawfare herself. She's going to give President Trump good advice in fighting crime, helping clean up this immigration mess, making sure that we have laws to protect us against terrorism. Pam is the right person at the right time. Well done, Mr. President.
Why do you think the left, especially on the immigration issue, we have known terrorists in the country, we have gang members, we have cartel members, we have, dozens and dozens of Americans like Laken Riley that have been murdered, dozens raped, including children, thousands of Americans victims of violent crime, and all you hear from Democrats, Democratic governors, people in Congress and the Senate, they care more about, quote, the rights. I was saying this in my monologue tonight. They care more about the rights that illegal immigrants don't have than they do about the safety and security of the American people. Can you explain that to me? Because I do not understand why they don't put our safety first.
Well, all I can say is that this election, in large part, was a referendum on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris' immigration policy. When President Trump was president during his first 4 years, we had the lowest illegal crossings in December of 2020 in the history of the country. The bad guys were, afraid. Fentanyl trafficking is at an all-time high. Americans are dying by the tens of thousands from fentanyl poisoning coming through Mexico, originating in China. More terrorists in our country than any time since we've been monitoring terrorists. The first thing he's going to do is clean that mess up. We're going to use a budget reconciliation process to get money to secure the border. I'm going to work with Stephen Miller and Pam Bondi. Criminal gangs, your days are numbered. Pam is coming after you. In states who want to continue this, sanctuary cities, you're on notice. We should cut all your money off. So I've never seen so many dangers to our country as I do now, from a broken border, crazy immigration laws. These people care more about the illegal immigrant than they do the average American citizen. And that's not just talk. That's reality after 4 years.
Let me ask you about the ICC and what they're trying to do to Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now, as a predicate here, the UN, for example, all of these globalist groups that we often fund, they have historically been anti-Semitic and anti-American. UN is a good case in point. The WHO, they were the propaganda wing for for the communist Chinese during COVID. The WEF, they don't have our best interests at heart. So all these globalist agreements, the Paris Accords, yeah, okay, India, China, developing nations, we pay the freight. So my question is, they don't have jurisdiction. What part of terrorism does this court not understand? What part of murder, rape, and kidnapping and torture and beheading do they not understand? Because that's what happened on October the 7th.
Yes, it did. And, you know, Israel's in a fight for its very life. The Jewish state is under siege from Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran has directly attacked Israel. And we live in an upside-down world where the Prime Minister of Israel and the Defense Minister of Israel are being prosecuted by a court in Belgium. Now, let me say this. The court ruled that Gaza is a state. No, there is no Palestinian state under international law. So that's the first thing they got wrong. And Israel's not a member of the International Criminal Court, nor are we. In 1998, I fought the idea that we would join the International Criminal Court. Why? Sovereignty. I do not want a court in The Hague trying American soldiers or American politicians defending our country. This is a direct threat to the state of Israel. There have been more resolutions condemning Israel in the UN than every other nation, all the nations combined. It's an anti-Semitic body, and this court is trying to literally put in jail the Prime Minister of Israel, the Defense Minister, for defending itself against multiple terrorist organizations. What will I do? If you are going to help the ICC as a nation enforce their arrest warrant against Bibi and Gallup, the former defense minister, I will put sanctions on you as a nation. You're going to have to pick the rogue ICC versus America. I'm working with Tom Cotton to have legislation passed as soon as we can to sanction any country that aids and abets the arrest of any politician in Israel. What they're doing in Israel is trying to prevent a second Holocaust. So to any ally, Canada, Britain, Germany, France, if you try to help the ICC, we're going to sanction you.
Well, that means I want every ally. And you saw little Justin in Canada and his position. What should the penalty be?
We should crush your economy because we're next. Why can't they go after Trump or any other American president under this theory? We're not a member of the ICC. In 2002, they threatened to prosecute our soldiers in Afghanistan. We came down hard on them. In 2017, one of the first things that President Trump did was put sanctions against the International Criminal Court to make sure they would protect our own troops. Biden took those sanctions and did away with them literally in the first month of his presidency. Now what do you have? You have the International Criminal Court coming after the Prime Minister of Israel, the Defense Minister of Israel, for trying to defend the Jewish state. If you help the ICC, we're going to crush your economy.
That's right. Friends and allies, you better beware, because this has to happen, or else they will come after you. And this is the equivalent of 40,000 dead Americans in a day. Senator, we like you in your golf outfit. Bring it anytime you want. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.